Douluo reversal, you can tell from the book title that it is a reversal. What kind of exciting story will happen when Renxue and Tang San swap roles? Yuntao said, the innate soul power is at level 20. Unfortunately, it's just a useless soul. Qianxun Ji said, my daughter should have been like this for her 3 life martial souls. Tang San said, Miss Xueer, you are the kindest person I have ever seen. Your eyes are very clear, while I, Tang San, am a hybrid of soul beasts and humans, and I did not see any contemptuous gaze in your eyes. Tang Hao said, this little girl is so talented, we must bring her back to Haotian Sect. Qian Daoliu said, who dares to touch my granddaughter? Die. Shura God. I was careless, there was no flash. Old Jack. People in the divine realm are all garbage. Since you dare to bully Xiaoxue, let me teach you how to be a good person. Bibidong said, Xueer, my good daughter. Hehe, stop talking and hurry up to read this book. Chapter 1. Innate Soul Power Level 20 and Defeated Martial Soul. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Douluo Continent, southwest of Tiando Empire, Fasno Province, Nodding City, Holy Soul Village. Holy Soul Village, hearing this place name for the first time may feel impressive, but in fact, it is just an ordinary village that cannot be more ordinary. The reason why it is called Holy Soul Village is actually recorded in legends, where a powerful soul saint emerged, hence the name Holy Soul Village. As for whether it is true or who the soul saint is, there is no way to verify it. On a scorching summer day, on the road in the village, a little girl about 6 years old was carrying firewood on her back and rushing home. As the camera zoomed in, the little girl's face also emerged. This is a little girl with a delicate face, with golden hair hanging down her shoulders. Her beautiful little face is adorned with a pair of flickering big eyes, like 2 sparkling black grapes, and her curved eyebrows are like willow leaves. The cherry-like little mouth has a chubby flesh, indicating that this little girl must be a beautiful embryo when she grows up. The little girl's eyes were clear as they shouldn't be at this age, and an emotion appeared on her face, complaining. I have been in this world for 6 years. Who did Renxue offend? I came to this world inexplicably. Let's forget about coming into this world. That irresponsible dad is just an alcoholic who knows how to drink all day long. His family is so poor that they can't afford it, and he doesn't care about anything. Thinking of this, Renxue felt a wave of displeasure. Renxue was not originally from this world, or rather her soul was not from this world. The world where the previous life was located was the blue star, which was called Earth, and here it is called Douluo Continent. I don't even know why I came here. Isn't it just that I worked overtime and got tired? I just slept for a while, really for a while, and then I came here, from a hungry little eagle to now, it's outrageous. It didn't take long for Renxue to arrive at his own door while rose to rush home. Looking at this dilapidated house, Renxue felt a wave of exhaustion. There was really no one who died of poverty, only those who died of laziness. Put the firewood outside the house, Renxue walked to the door, took a deep breath, and tried to calm down as much as possible. He couldn't be angry, at least he was also his father, so he couldn't be angry. Walking to his father's door, he gently pushed it open and saw a middle-aged man with a scruffy beard. The middle-aged man lay on the bed drunk, still as before, without any change. The hair on top of my head is messy, it's obvious that I haven't tidied it up for a long time. Wearing a tattered coat, with a muscular figure and a somewhat handsome appearance, Renxue couldn't praise this habit of drinking, and it was very annoying. This is my father Qianxun's illness, an irresponsible father. Smelling the smell of alcohol in the room, Renxue couldn't help but furrow her brows and show a disdainful expression on her face. She covered her nose with her hand and looked at her father. It seemed that upon hearing the sound of the door opening, Qianxun Ji's sleepy eyes slightly opened, and upon seeing that it was his own daughter, he fell asleep again. Dong'er, Qianxun muttered to himself, seemingly missing the person in his mouth, and his face also showed a painful expression. Renxue didn't know who the name Dong'er was. Every time his father got drunk, he would mutter this name. When he asked his father who Dong'er was, he denied knowing. Although I guessed it might be my mother, my father said she had already died. When I asked where my mother's grave was, my father said there was none. Renxue speculated that her mother might not have died, perhaps because she despised her father's drunkenness and laziness, so she left us and ran away. Sigh. My heart is tired. Renxue sighed in her heart, glanced at her father again, and then gently closed the door. The reason why she wanted to see her father was because she was afraid that something would happen if he got drunk. After all, alcohol is not a good thing. After looking at the sky, it was time to cook. Renxue walked into the kitchen and got busy. This kitchen is not high, it seems to have been deliberately designed for oneself. Thinking of this, Renxue sighed again. I'm only 6 years old, and other children are still playing with mud. You even built the kitchen where I cook, it's outrageous. After not being busy for long, the aroma wafted in the kitchen, and Renxue nodded in satisfaction. Take the prepared food out of the kitchen, place it on the table, and then walk to my father's door and knock on it. Not long after, the door was opened and Qianxun Ji walked out. He sat down at the table as usual, looked at the dishes on the table, and nodded in satisfaction. At this moment, Qianxun Ji didn't seem to be completely drunk. He looked extremely energetic, and Renxue was speechless when he saw this scene. When you don't eat, you get drunk, and when it's time to eat, you feel refreshed. It's quite outrageous. Father doesn't care about family matters, he doesn't even know how to make money to support the family. Renxue didn't feel maternal and paternal love in this world, and couldn't play with the little friends in the village. Every time the kids saw Renxue, they would say she was a motherless child and that her mother had run away with someone else. If it weren't for Renxue being a person of 2 generations and being said by other friends like this, perhaps his soul would have developed some kind of illness. Bringing the prepared rice to his father's face, Renxue said to start the meal and quickly started eating. Don't eat too fast, it's not enough. If you eat too slowly, it's gone. Qianxuan's illness is like eating with an empty stomach, which is outrageous. It didn't take long for the two of them to sweep away the food on the table. Qianxun Ji let out a deep belch and praised, Xueer, you have made progress in your cooking skills and you have done a good job. After speaking, he stood up and prepared to return to his room to continue sleeping. Renxue is very speechless, with the same words and actions. I don't know if it's because of laziness to change. Just as Chihiro was about to open the door, an elderly voice came from outside the room. Chihiro, do you want to go back to sleep? Upon hearing these words, Qianxun Ji stopped the action of opening the door and turned around, his eyes slightly narrowed. Renxue looked in the direction of the sound, and what caught her eye was a gentle and kind figure of an old man. The old man had pale hair and many wrinkles on his face, which showed that time had left many marks on his face. Grandpa Jack, why are you here? Come in and sit down quickly. Renxue quickly stood up and invited the old man. The old man is the head of Holy Soul Village, and others call him Old Jack. He is a very kind-hearted old man. Due to his father's laziness, Old Jack has often helped Renxue's family over the years and occasionally brought some vegetables. Renxue respects Old Jack very much. Xiaoxue came over to let Grandpa see if he has grown taller. Old Jack waved to Renxue. Renxue's face showed a smile and he bounced up to Old Jack, looking very cute. Hello Grandpa Jack, Renxue bowed slightly to Old Jack. Renxue is very sensible and always greets her elders, so the adults in the village like her very much. Qianxun Ji said coldly, do you have anything to do, village chief? Old Jack is actually not much older than Qianxun Ji, but Renxue is his own daughter, also known as Old Jack Grandpa, which invisibly lowers his generation, which makes Qianxun Ji somewhat unhappy. Old Jack seems to have gotten used to Qianxun's attitude. Xiaoxue is almost 6 years old, right? She should also attend this year's awakening ceremony. Qianxun Ji glanced at Renxue, lost in thought, and then looked at old Jack calmly, saying, "Then let's join in." "What day is it?" Old Jack said, "In just 3 days, I'll come pick her up." Old Jack looked at Qianxun's illness and clearly wanted to say that if he pointed at you to send her, it might delay. Qianxun nodded and sat down at the table, ignoring old Jack. Awakening ceremony. Renxue asked curiously, "Grandpa Jack, what is the awakening ceremony?" New book seeking support. Chapter 2. Innate Soul Power Level 20 and Defeated Martial Soul, 2. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Old Jack smiled as he looked at Renxue and explained to her, "Each of us has our own martial soul, and we will have an awakening ceremony around the age of 6. Because 6 years old is the best age to awaken our martial soul, having a martial soul can enhance our abilities in certain aspects. Even the most ordinary martial soul can be helpful. If you have an excellent martial soul that you can cultivate, then you may even become a soul master. The awakening ceremony only occurs once a year, and I can't let you miss it." It was the deacon of the Haotian branch hall in Notting City who personally helped the children in our village awaken. That deacon is a soul master at the level of a great soul master. When talking about the 3 words, great soul master, Jack's eyes clearly showed a look of envy. Renxue has no idea what a soul master is. He has never heard of it before, but now he hears that he still has a martial soul. What kind of ghost is a soul master? Renxue couldn't help but feel a little curious and asked, "What does great soul master mean?" Old Jack is obviously very patient with Renxue. In his heart, the most sensible child in the village is undoubtedly Renxue in front of him. This child always greets the elders in the village and is also very diligent. It is hard to imagine how such a father could have such a well-behaved daughter. The Great Soul Master is a title at the Soul Master level. Soul Masters are the most noble profession in our entire Douluo continent. They can be powerful warriors or have excellent auxiliary abilities. However, regardless of the type of Soul Master, their level is ranked according to the same title. Soul Masters all have their own martial soul power, which is divided into 10 titles based on the strength of their martial soul power. Each title is further divided into 10 levels. Those who have just started are called Soul Masters, and as long as their martial soul awakens, everyone is a Soul Master. If their martial soul can cultivate, when their soul power reaches 11 levels, they will enter the next title, which is Soul Master. And the Great Soul Master is the 3rd title in the entire title sequence. Once they reach the realm of Great Soul Master, they are already quite powerful Soul Masters. The overall 10 titles are like this: Soul Master, Great Soul Master, Soul Zun, Soul Sect, Soul King, Soul Emperor, Soul Saint, Soul Douluo, and Title Douluo. The name of our Douluo continent comes from this. Legend has it that Douluo, who has reached level 90 or above, can choose a title for themselves. They are simply invincible beings. Old Jack's eyes sparkled with pride. 100 years ago, our Holy Soul Village had an 8th class Soul Saint title. It is extremely rare in the entire city of Notting, and even in the entire province of Fasno. Renxue was a little curious, wondering if she was like the martial arts masters she had learned in her past life. Thinking of this, Renxue made a starting move and used the Wing Chun boxing she had learned in her past life. The entire process was seamless and seamless. "Grandpa Jack, is that Soul Saint the same as me?" Watching Renxue gesturing around here, old Jack felt a bit embarrassed and said, "No, Xiaoxue. The Soul Saint is an omnipotent being that can do anything from heaven to earth." Qianxun Ji, who was sitting at the table, pursed his lips and sneered, "What kind of Soul Saint?" That's just a legend. As if being touched by the scales, old Jack was furious and said, "What is legend? Legends also come from facts. Chihiro, you have been in the village for 6 years now, and you should understand the position of that soul saint in our hearts. If I hear you insult the soul saint lord again, I will drive you out of the village. If it weren't for Xiaoxue's sake, do you think I would be willing to come to your dog's nest?" Qianxun Ji remained calm and got up to tidy up the dishes on the table and put them into the kitchen, ignoring the gaze of old Jack. Old Jack glared fiercely at Qianxun Ji before saying to Renxue, "Don't be so decadent as your father in the future. Alright, I'll leave first. In 3 days, I'll come pick you up." After speaking, old Jack angrily left. After old Jack left, Renxue turned to look at Qianxun Ji. "Dad," Renxue called out. Qianxun Ji turned around and glanced coldly at Renxue. "What are you looking at? You have to go by yourself." Renxue felt a bit aggrieved and said, "I want my dad to take me there." What's good about being a soul master? You can't even protect the person you want to protect. "It's better to be an ordinary person," said Qianxun Ji with a painful expression in his eyes, but he quickly took it back. Renxue also saw the pain that flashed in her father's eyes and asked, "Is it because of Mom?" Qianxun Ji's voice grew louder and he said, "No, don't ask so many questions, kid. If you want to go, you can go with old Jack tomorrow. Dad won't stop you." After finishing speaking, Qianxun Ji threw away the dishes and went straight back to the room. Upon returning to the room, Chihiroshi closed the door and a tear flowed down his face, sinking into sadness. Renxue doesn't understand why every time she mentions her mother, her father always avoids this question. Sigh. "It's really annoying, I'm not a child anymore." Renxue sighed and then cleaned up the dishes before leaving. "Dad, I'm out now." "Drinking less is not good for your health," Renxue shouted at Dad's door. But he did not receive a response from Qianxun Ji. Renxue knew that his father could hear what he was saying. Gently closing the door, Renxue looked at the small mountain outside the village and quickly ran towards it. Even if one knows that there is such a powerful presence in this world, they must also familiarize themselves with the Wing Chun boxing of their past lives. There is no law in this world, and no one will protect civilians. Practicing Wing Chun boxing well can be used for self-defense, and only one's own strength is the truth. From Grandpa Jack's mouth, she learned that there are 2 types of people in this world: commoners and nobles. Commoners need to bow when they see nobles, and she doesn't want to kneel and bow when they see nobles in the future. Who is Renxue? She is the hard-working mistress of a state-owned enterprise in China. She is accustomed to equality in her past life and resists the rules of this world. The village was at least 2,000 meters away from the direction of the hill, but Renxue didn't take long to reach the opposite hill. Her golden hair fluttered in the wind, wearing a white dress. Her petite figure and beautiful face formed a beautiful scene here, like a little angel. The fresh breeze blew, and Renxue also felt a hint of coolness. For her, who often exercised, she was not afraid of catching a cold or getting sick from the wind. Renxue had not yet experienced the word in this world. "I don't know why, but my physical condition seems to be better than the average person." Renxue did a starting pose and started practicing. Wing Chun Quan is a technique that uses quick and slow attacks, as well as skillful and unexpected attack techniques to make it difficult for opponents to parry. Wing Chun Quan does not have any fixed moves, it only has unconventional and preemptive attacks. As for strength, there is no need for strong requirements. The human body has many weaknesses, and as long as you attack key acupoints, you only need one strike to defeat the enemy. As the saying goes, an expert watches the way, while an outsider watches the excitement. Don't be fooled by her casual gestures here, only she knows the skills and strength involved. At the age of 6, my body couldn't withstand long periods of study, so I wiped the sweat off my forehead and started practicing again. It wasn't until the evening when the fire burned the clouds and the sun was about to set that Renxue stopped practicing. As she stopped, she also remembered something. Oh no, it's been too long since I came out. I forgot to cook for my dad. Thinking of this, Renxue quickly rushed towards the direction of home. Reversal, Douluo reversal, if you like, you can bookmark it. The fan fiction has similar settings, different stories, different martial souls, and different ways to obtain soul beasts. Of course, even if it is a reversal, the master will definitely be different. Chapter 3. Innate Soul Power Level 20 and Defeated Martial Soul, 3. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. When Renxue ran down the mountain, there was a figure waiting for her here. Dad, Renxue called out. She didn't expect her father to come here to pick her up. The sun has set from the east. Qianxun Ji responded and then walked up to Renxue, lifting her up before she could react. Renxue pouted and realized that she was not a child anymore. Dad took the wrong medicine today. Qianxun Ji ignored the expression on Renxue's face and placed her on his own back, carrying Renxue towards home. Feeling her father's spacious and gentle shoulders, Renxue also lay on Qianxun Ji's back. Although Qianxun Ji didn't say anything, Renxue could feel her father's concern. Thinking of this, Renxue couldn't help but smile at the corner of her mouth. As the sun set in the west, the last glow of the evening stretched their figures longer and longer. When he returned home, Chihiro Ji had already prepared the food. The two of them sat at the dinner table, and Renxue said, "Dinner is ready," before quickly eating. Qianxun Ji didn't use his chopsticks, he just watched Renxue eat. As he watched Renxue eat quickly, a smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. My daughter understands things early and doesn't cry like other kids. Sometimes she also does strange things. Today, Renxue was very clear about practicing Wing Chun on the small mountain. Although he didn't know what his daughter was doing, he wouldn't stop her. His daughter had already started to have her own ideas, which was a good thing. Although I owe my daughter a childhood in recent years and I'm sorry for Donger's instructions, do you know Donger? Our daughter has already started to grow up and has her own ideas. Renxue watched as her father didn't move her chopsticks, and couldn't help but pause while eating. She swallowed the food in her mouth before saying, "Dad, you eat too." Upon hearing his daughter's voice, Qianxun Ji realized it. Watching her staring into his big eyes, Qianxun Ji started using his chopsticks. Qianxun Ji picked up a piece of meat and placed it in Renxue's bowl. Looking at Renxue's puzzled gaze, he slowly spoke, "It's time for you to grow your body now, eat more." Renxue replied, then withdrew her gaze and looked at the piece of fat in the bowl. She fell into contemplation, wondering if eating this fat would make her gain weight. "But this is my father's love for me. Do you want to eat it?" Without much consideration, Renxue ate the meat. In order to care for her father, Renxue also put a few pieces of fat in Qianxun Ji's bowl, and a naive smile appeared on her face. "Dad, you eat too." Looking at Renxue's obedient and sensible appearance, Qianxun Ji was very pleased. This is his daughter, who cares about him just like Donger. Thinking of this, Qianxuan's mood improved once again. It didn't take long for the two of them to eat well, and the dishes were still cleaned up by Chihiro. Renxue was a bit surprised. Dad was particularly diligent today. Could it be that Grandpa Jack woke up his dad in the afternoon? It seems that Grandpa Jack will have to come and sit at home frequently in the future. When Qianxun Ji returned to the room, Renxue took out paper and pen and painted on the table. In no time, a landscape painting was sketched by Renxue. Under the illumination of the lights, this painting seemed to come to life. The lifelike brushstrokes made those master painters couldn't help but marvel at it. This is also the source of Qian Renxue's income. When there is nothing to do, Qian Renxue will paint some landscape paintings and sell them in Notting City. These things are not expensive either, only a pair of silver soul coins, and the things painted by Qian Renxue are loved by the nobles. Qian Renxue sometimes takes orders from the nobles to draw portraits for others. The orders placed by those nobles are usually worth a fortune, and as long as there is one order, she and her father can live for several months. It's not that Qian Renxue wants to raise the price, but those nobles are not lacking in silver soul coins. Every time they make a move, it's a golden soul coin that smells very good. The prices in this world can buy 2 candies with a copper soul coin, 1 pound of grain with a silver soul coin, and 100 pounds of grain with a gold soul coin. Qian Renxue painted another painting, which she took very seriously and started slowly. It seemed that this work had some special meaning for her. She thought for a long time and then started again. It wasn't until very late that Qian Renxue finally finished the work. Finally, because she was too tired, she crawled onto the table and fell asleep. After Qian Renxue fell asleep, the door of Qianxun Ji's room was gently pushed open. It was none other than Qianxun Ji's father who carefully walked behind Qian Renxue without making a sound. When he saw the artwork painted by Qian Renxue, Qianxun Ji couldn't help but be taken aback. It was a portrait painting with 3 people, 2 adults, and a child standing in the middle, holding the hands of 2 adults. The child in the middle is obviously Qian Renxue himself, while the one on the left is Qianxun Ji, and the one on the right is a woman. The woman's face is not drawn, but blank. Seeing this, Qianxun Ji's eyes couldn't help but turn red. Suppressing the complex emotions in his heart, Qianxun Ji carefully picked up Qian Renxue. "Mom!" Qian Renxue seemed to be calling out to her mother like she was talking in her sleep, and her cute little face also showed a look of longing. Upon hearing these words, Chihiro couldn't help but feel a pain in his heart. He thought of his wife's last words. "Chihiro, take care of our children, goodbye forever." Wiping away his own tears, Qianxun Ji carefully carried Qian Renxue back into the room and covered her with a blanket. Then, Qianxun Ji cautiously retreated out and gently closed the door. Qianxun Ji waited for a while longer, confirming that Qian Renxue had fallen asleep before returning to his room. After returning to the room, Chihiro Ji buried his grief and anger, and his face also showed hatred. His fists clenched his veins and erupted. Thinking of his wife, he detested his incompetence and wanted to seek revenge. However, reason told him that it was not an opportunity yet. He had to wait for his daughter to become self-sufficient, and then he could let go of everything and do what he wanted to do. The upper 3 sects and the lower 4 sects, please wait. I will soon make you pay for your debts with blood, and this day will not be too far away. As for what Qianxun Ji was thinking in her heart, Qian Renxue naturally wouldn't know. At this moment, she was lying in bed, soundly asleep. Chapter 4. Innate Soul Power Level 20 and Defeated Martial Soul, 4. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The next morning, a petite figure appeared in a small mountain in Xinghun village. She ran from the foot of the mountain to the mountainside, then from the mountainside to the top of the mountain, back and forth, in a cycle, time and time again. Even if she was sweating profusely and panting heavily, she never stopped. She was like 1,000 feet of snow. Since she has made up her mind to become stronger, she will work hard. The only way to become stronger now is to exercise her body. For her, who is only 6 years old, being able to do this step has already made many people hesitant. Qian Renxue will set a small goal for herself. How many laps do she need to run per hour? How long will it take again? She silently remembered all of these in her mind, and even if she couldn't meet the standards, she wasn't discouraged. She will add weight to her feet to achieve the effect of exercising herself. Although these weights are only a few pounds, don't forget that she is only a 6-year-old child. For a 6-year-old child, being able to do this step is already very good. In the morning, she ran on the mountain, took a break at noon, and continued practicing Wing Chun in the afternoon. The first step of Wing Chun has been practiced, and now we need to proceed to the second step. Renxue asked his father to make a wooden stake for him. Driving wooden stakes is the second step of Wing Chun and also the most difficult step in learning Wing Chun. In the evening, Renxue would knock this wooden stake 1,000 times, and many green marks appeared on her hands. Qianxun Ji was just silently watching from the side. He didn't know what Renxue was up to. How can I hurt myself like this? He felt a lot of pain in his heart. But Renxue said that this was a cultivation, and Qianxun Ji felt a little better as long as his daughter knew what she was doing. Qianxun Ji could also see that Renxue's physical fitness seemed to be much better than before, otherwise he would have stopped it long ago. Children always have strange thoughts, and Qianxun Ji doesn't doubt anything. He just feels that Renxue's cultivation method should be very painful. Renxue didn't care about Qianxun Ji's thoughts in his heart. He practiced as he pleased, and there was no such thing as a free lunch in the world. Even if those people in this world can go up and down, she still believes that practicing and learning Wing Chun Quan now will be of great help to herself in the future. Even if it doesn't help her in the future, it will still be helpful now. Now she can feel that if she fights with her peers, she can fight 7 times alone, completely without panting. In the evening, Renxue was still hammering at the wooden stake, and her goal for today was increased by 500. It wasn't until she finished hammering these 500 times that Renxue stopped panting heavily. Wiping the sweat off her forehead, Renxue walked over to the nearby tea table and poured a cup of tea. She gulped down a small sip. Looking at his daughter, Qianxun Ji also felt a bit sad. Originally, this daughter should have grown up slowly under his and Donger's care, but fate did not meet people's wishes. Qianxun Ji cannot give Qianren Snow Princess the same life now. However, Qianxun Ji believes that in the future, his daughter can live a life of one person below 10,000 people. He wants his daughter to become one of the most powerful people in the world, and he wants her to enjoy glory and power. He will pave all the roads for Qianren Snow. Xiaoxue, come here for a moment. Qianxun Ji waved to Qianbianx. Renxue stood up from the tea table and bounced over to Qianxun Ji's side. She hugged Qianxun Ji's thigh and looked up at her father's face, revealing a happy smile. Dad, what's wrong? Looking at the scar on Renxue's hand, Qianxun Ji couldn't help but feel a pang of heartache. Looking at Renxue's innocent smile, Qianxun Ji organized a few words and said, "Would your cultivation like this be too harmful to your body?" Renxue shook her head and asked, "Dad, is there a way to cultivate without harming your body?" Qianxun Ji swallowed down what he wanted to say. The cultivation methods that didn't harm his body, even ordinary exercise, would harm his body. Even working in the ground would also harm his body. The cultivation methods he knew, such as enhancing his physique, seemed to be the only ones suitable for Renxue. It wasn't that there were no better methods than this, but those methods were not suitable for Renxue. After all, Renxue was just a 6-year-old girl. Qianxun Ji shook his head and said, "Although Dad doesn't have any good cultivation methods, there are ways to reduce the damage to your body." Renxue was taken aback for a moment and asked curiously, "Dad, quickly tell me what to do to reduce the damage that cultivation can cause to my body." Qianxun Ji picked up Renxue and walked back to the room, saying, "That's to wrap your palm with soul power. That way, even a stone can be easily smashed, not to mention your wooden stake." Renxue was a bit surprised and asked, "Is that soul power really so magical? Can it blend with the Wing Chun fist technique I use?" Wing Chun Quan, Qianxun Ji silently remembered this name in his heart. The fist technique created by Xiaoxue seems to have an effect on ordinary people, although it may be a bit bitter, it can greatly improve physical fitness and strength. This seems to be a cultivation method created for ordinary people. Of course, it can be integrated together. As long as you awaken your soul power, Xiaoxue, you can try to integrate it into your Wing Chun boxing techniques. Regarding the fusion of soul power, Qianxun Ji is aware of it, and many people know this method, but they do not have such a regular fist like Xiaoxue. Although Xiaoxue may seem to be gesturing wildly, he is very clear that every action Xiaoxue makes uses both skillful and skillful force, and Xiaoxue's reaction and adaptability are very strong now. Renxue nodded and said, I will definitely try to integrate it when the time comes. In the following time, day after day, Renxue repeated this exercise, only stopping to rest occasionally when she was injured or too tired. Sweat soaked her clothes time and time again, dragging her heavy body back and forth on the mountain peak, and finally falling to the ground with a soft body. Renxue gasped for breath, feeling like her chest was about to burst open. A fire was burning fiercely, and she wanted to get up and continue running, but her body no longer obeyed any of her commands. Even so, he was not discouraged. She believed that as long as there was enough effort, he could receive the expected reward. Under such training and persistence, he persisted until the third day. On the morning of the third day, Renxue was still hammering on the wooden stake, and her goal for today was 2,000 drops. 1145-1146, 1147, Xiaoxue, Grandpa has come to pick you up. Old Jack walked slowly towards Renxue's side. Renxue also saw Old Jack and stopped exercising in his hands. He walked over to Old Jack and saluted him, saying, Good morning, Grandpa Jack. Okay, Xiaoxue is also early. Old Jack narrowed his eyes slightly and a smile appeared on his face. Looking at Renxue's cute appearance, his heart melted. Then he turned his gaze to Qianxun Ji and said lightly, Xiaoji, you're also here. Qianxun Ji's mouth twitched and said, This is my home. I'm not here, where am I going? Old Jack gave an awkward smile and then pulled Renxue away. Renxue turned around and said, Dad, I'm going to awaken my soul power. Qianxun nodded and then walked over to Old Jack, giving him a gold soul coin. He said calmly, This is the money for Xueer to awaken her martial soul. Old Jack looked at Qianxun's illness and finally received the golden soul coin. The awakening of the martial soul in the Haotian Sect's branch hall requires the golden soul coin, and Old Jack wouldn't say anything about it because he didn't have that much money himself. Chapter 5. Innate Soul Power Level 20 and Defeated Martial Soul, 5. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Under the leadership of Old Jack, Renxue followed him to the Haotian branch hall in the center of the village. Of course, this so-called Haotian branch hall is just a larger wooden house. Because everyone has a martial soul, every year there are children who undergo martial soul awakening. So, in any place on the Douluo continent, you can see the figure of Haotian branch hall. Of course, these are just separate halls. Different levels. Previously, it was actually a sub-hall of the martial soul hall. However, 6 years ago, the Haotian Sect joined forces with 2 major sects and the lower 4 sects to attack the martial soul hall. Wars have always been cruel, involving not only soul masters but also the common people. In the end, the Pope of the martial soul hall, Bibidong, chose to sacrifice himself to prevent the suffering of the common people, and the martial soul hall was forced to close its doors. Previously, awakening the martial soul hall did not require a gold soul coin, but since Haotian Sect took control of the martial soul branch hall, each awakening required a gold soul coin, and the martial soul branch hall was also renamed Haotian branch hall. There are a total of 8 children who have awakened their martial souls in Holy Soul Village this year, and Renxue was the last one to come under the leadership of Old Jack. The children in the village don't look up to Renxue very much, because Renxue has never had a mother since childhood, and the feeling of poverty and love for wealth is not only among the nobility, but also more obvious among the common people. However, Qian Renxue herself is a person of 2 generations, and her actual age has already exceeded 25, so she naturally does not want to deal with these children. For her, having extra time is better spent earning money. Therefore, she did not have childhood playmates. In addition to village chief Jack and the 8 children who arrived together, there is also a young man in the Haotian branch hall. He looks like he is in his 20s, with sword eyebrows and starry eyes, and a very handsome appearance. Wearing a white strong suit with a black cloak on the back, there is a fist-sized hammer pattern in the center of the chest. This is the standard attire for personnel directly under the Haotian Sect. On the left chest, there is a badge carved with a long sword, on which 3 hammers are interlocked. People like Jack who are familiar with Soul Masters know that the number of 3 handles represents the 3rd-class title of Soul Masters, the Great Soul Master, while the hammer represents that this deacon from the Haotian Sect is a War Soul Master. "Hello, respected War Soul Master, I would like to trouble you this time." Old Jack respectfully saluted the young man. The young man's eyebrows were filled with a faint sense of pride, and he bowed slightly in return, saying, "I don't have much time, let's start now." Old Jack gave the young man 8 gold soul coins and turned around, saying, "Okay. Children, this is the War Soul Master from Nodding City. Next, he will lead you to unlock your own martial souls. You must cooperate with the Master to awaken your martial souls. Grandpa looks forward to some of you becoming Soul Masters." The young man said impatiently, "All right, you said the same thing last year. Is it really that easy to become a Soul Master? I have already walked through 6 villages, and there is not a person with soul power. There is also no suitable martial soul." There was a hint of sadness in old Jack's eyes, and he sighed and said, "Yes. Only the inheritors of various major sects are the easiest to become Soul Masters. It's really difficult for us ordinary people." Shaking his head, he walked out of the Haotian branch hall. The young man's gaze fell on the 8 children in front of him. As the inspector of the Haotian Sect, helping ordinary people awaken their martial souls was a necessary task for him. He had already become accustomed to it, and in the past, there were no gold soul coins to obtain, but with that meager salary. Now he can make some extra money without losing. "Children, stand in a row." The attitude of young people towards these children is much gentler. 8 children stood still in front of the young people, with Qian Renxue standing on the far left. His figure is thinner and smaller compared to children of the same age. The young man smiled and said, "My name is Yuntao, a level 26 Soul Master. I am your guide. Now, I will awaken your martial souls one by one. Remember, no matter what happens, don't be afraid." As he spoke, Yuntao opened his package on the table next to him and took out 2 things, 6 black round stones and a shiny blue crystal ball. Yuntao placed 6 black stones on the ground in a hexagonal shape and gestured for the first child on the right to stand among them. "Don't be afraid, close your eyes and feel it carefully." As he spoke, Yuntao's eyes suddenly lit up. Amidst the children's horrified gazes, he whispered, "A lone wolf, possessed." A faint blue light was first released from the center of his eyebrows, following the position of the eyebrows all the way up and into the bun. Yuntao's hair was originally black, but when the blue light was injected, it instantly turned gray and quickly grew longer. The same colored hair appeared on his exposed hands, and at the same time, his body seemed to have expanded much more than before. The whole body is filled with a sense of muscle. Haotian Zong's specific clothing has good elasticity and did not explode due to his larger body size. Yuntao's eyes had turned into a faint green, and the sharp claws protruding from his fingers flickered with a faint cold light. 2 halos lit up from his feet, constantly hovering from his feet to his head. One of them is white, and the other is yellow. Extremely eerie. The boy he called out to be among the black stones was a boy. Seeing the changes in Yuntao body, he suddenly exclaimed, so scared that he was about to run. The green light in Su Yuntao's eyes was indeed frightening. He grabbed the child and said, "Don't move. Don't be afraid when you say it, this is my martial soul, the lone wolf. If any of you can become a soul master in the future, you will also use the same ability." The only thing she wasn't too afraid of was Qian Renxue, but when Su Yuntao changed, she also felt uncomfortable because it was too ugly. If she awakened such a martial soul, she felt like she would still listen to her father and be an ordinary person compared to surprise. Qian Renshue's heart was more resistant, with gray fur and green eyes on her body, all of which were characteristics of wolves. Can it be said that after possessing a martial soul, a person became a wolf? No, it should be possessing the ability of a wolf. So, the profession of soul master should better utilize the abilities of martial souls. However, Grandpa Jack said that everyone's martial soul is different. For the first time, Qian Renxue realized that she had developed an interest in the profession of soul master. She was now eager to know what her martial soul was. If it's a good-looking martial soul, then cultivate it. If it's not good-looking, then forget it, because this person named Su Yuntao is really ugly now. Su Yuntao quickly clapped his hands, injecting 6 faint green lights into the 6 black stones on the ground. Suddenly, a layer of golden light was released from the 6 stones, forming a light golden mask that enveloped the previous child. The following 3 chapters are the same as the original work, so I borrowed them because I wanted to write the settings clearly. After all, I am writing about Douluo Qianren. Don't criticize me, continue reading, the plot is different anyway. Chapter 6. Innate Full Soul Power Level 20 and Defeated Martial Soul, 6. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. I don't know why, but as soon as the child who was still crying was enveloped by the light golden light, he immediately became calm and stood there, somewhat dazed. Gold dots floated out from the black stones on the ground and then entered the boy's body. The boy's body began to tremble slightly, wanting to scream but unable to make a sound. Extend your right hand, Su Yuntao's green eyes stared at the boy, commanding solemnly. The boy instinctively extended his right hand, and suddenly, all the dots of light rushed out. In an instant, a hungry little wolf appeared in his palm. It seems that the little wolf is not an illusion of light and shadow, but a real existence. Su Yuntao frowned and said, "It's a beast martial soul. Just like me, it's great." The golden light gradually converged, and the boy looked at the hungry little wolf in his hand with some surprise, feeling somewhat bewildered. Su Yuntao said, "Your martial soul is a wolf, a beast martial soul. Come, let me test if you have soul power. If you have soul power, you can practice as a soul master. After all, your martial soul is the same as mine." "Big master, what should I do?" the boy asked timidly. Su Yuntao said calmly, "Use your mind to retrieve your martial soul. In the future, when you want to use it again, use your mind to call it out." The boy tried for a long time before taking back the little wolf in his hand. Su Yuntao handed the blue crystal ball in his hand to him and gestured for him to place his right hand on it. The boy's tender little hands and Su Yuntao's wolf claws are positioned above and below the crystal ball, making the contrast very obvious. After a moment, Su Yuntao said somewhat disappointed, "It's a pity that you have such a good martial soul, but you don't have soul power. You can't become a soul master. Let's go aside first." The same scene continued to unfold, and 5 children's martial souls awakened one after another. Their martial souls were all agricultural tools such as hoes and sickles, and not even a beast's martial soul appeared. As for soul power, it was judged by Su Yuntao as none. It's the 7th child's turn, the last one in front of Qianren Snow. Continuously using soul power, Su Yuntao seems to be a bit tired, but he is still prepared to help these 8 children complete the awakening process. The golden dots gathered together, and this time, it was no longer a farming tool, and there was a change. A light blue grass appeared in the girl's palm, gently swaying. Renxue vaguely felt that he had seen this blue grass before. Quickly, she remembered that this kind of grass was called blue-silver grass, which could be seen everywhere in the village, just like the green grass in her original world. Apart from its strong vitality, it had no other function. It's just that the girl didn't recognize it at a glance because there was a light golden mask outside. Although not a farming tool, Yuntao's disappointment was even more evident in his eyes. He was a useless martial soul. He had no attack power, no defense power, and no auxiliary ability. Blue-silver grass was also considered the standard form of a useless martial soul. As he spoke, he handed the blue crystal ball to the girl according to the procedure, and as he expected, there was still no soul power present. Finally, it was Qianren Snow's turn. Without saying anything, Yuntao had already stepped forward and stood in the center of 6 black stones. As Yuntao's 6 soul powers were infused, the pale golden light shone again. Warmth, this is the first feeling of Renxue, as if the whole person is wrapped in a warm and cozy world, indescribable comfort. No wonder those children before would stabilize their emotions as soon as they were enveloped by this golden light. The warm breath seeped into her body, and Renxue could clearly feel that the internal strength of her Wing Chun fist seemed to fluctuate slightly. Then, under the traction of that warm energy, something seemed to break in her body, and all the warm breath rushed towards her palm in an instant. Yuntao's eyes suddenly lit up, because within the golden mask, there were even more golden dots appearing this time than the sum of all the children before. He vaguely felt that a quite powerful martial soul was about to appear. Excitement overflows beyond words. For these Haotian branch hall deacons who are responsible for ordinary martial soul awakening, if they can awaken a child with extraordinary potential and then bring him into the Haotian Sect, they can gain many benefits in terms of evaluation, which will greatly benefit promotion. However, soon Yuntao was disappointed. Renxue instinctively raised his right hand, and what he saw was black. This black color has appeared for the second time today, just like one of the awakened children before. The sickle, a rusty sickle, is the same blue-silver grass as the girl before. The standard for abolishing martial souls exists. Yuntao said helplessly, another useless martial soul. This sickle can't even cut off the blue-silver grass. It seems that Holy Soul Village has wasted time this time. Alright, children, you can leave now. Previously, a large number of golden dots appeared, which originally brought him great hope, but in the end, it was just a rusty sickle, and the feeling of the drop made Yuntao somewhat unhappy. Uncle, you haven't tested my soul power yet. Renxue looked at Yuntao as he was about to put away the blue crystal ball and quickly reminded him. Yuntao said without looking back, no need to try. Your scythe is a mutated martial soul, and it mutates in a bad direction. If the awakened scythe is a brand new scythe, you can still practice, but if your scythe is rusty, it means it mutates in a bad direction. Uncle, can you help me test it? Renxue knew that when the golden light wrapped around him just now, 2 martial souls appeared in his other hand. He now has a total of 3 martial souls, but he has awakened differently from others. She didn't intend to say it, and now she wants to test her soul power. Okay. Trying soul power won't waste too much time. Moreover, Renxue's silly and cute appearance also melted his heart. Today's troubles were all swept away by this cute little guy's appearance. As he spoke, he handed the blue crystal ball to Renxue. According to the method taught by Yuntao before, Renxue controlled to retract her sickle into her body. She found that this was not difficult, as long as she withdrew her power according to the internal power control of Wing Chun fist, she could do it. At the same time, she also noticed that when the scythe martial soul appeared, it seemed as if her internal strength was surging out, as if the black scythe was condensed from her own internal strength. As soon as her palm touched the blue crystal ball, Renxue's palm seemed to be electrified. She was surprised to find that the beautiful blue crystal ball had a huge suction force, and her internal strength surged out as if she had found a vent. She wanted to break free, but couldn't escape the strong suction. Equally surprised was Yuntao. Just as he thought the last soul power test in Holy Soul Village was just a formality, suddenly the blue crystal ball in his hand lit up, and the dazzling blue light spread from the beginning. In the blink of an eye, the crystal ball shone like a brilliant gem. A faint blue halo is exposed, indescribably moving. According to traditional testing, as long as the crystal ball shows a slight sense, even a hint of light, it proves that the subject has soul power. However, there is only one explanation for the dazzling light shining in the blue crystal ball in front of them. Oh my goodness, it's an innate soul power of level 20. Qingguang released from Yuntao again, and the crystal ball bounced Renxue's palm away. At this moment, his gaze at the girl in front of him had become completely different. It feels like watching a monster. Renxue naturally realized that her test results were different from those of other children and asked in confusion, "Uncle, what is innate soul power level 20? Chapter 7. Innate full soul power level 20 and defeated martial soul, 7. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Yuntao stared blankly at Renxue and subconsciously explained, when a martial soul awakens, besides the form of the martial soul determining its strength, the amount of soul power is also crucial. Most people do not have soul power when the martial soul awakens, just like these children before them. They are destined to never become soul masters in their lifetime. As long as soul power appears, even if there is only a trace, it can be practiced through meditation. During the awakening of the martial soul, the amount of soul power is crucial, determining the starting point of the soul master's cultivation. The higher the soul power, the faster the cultivation speed. At the same time, because the starting point is high, it naturally needs to be practiced. Leading others. The so-dot called innate full soul power refers to the highest innate soul power that can be achieved when the martial soul awakens, and you have actually reached level 20 of innate full soul power. The highest soul power, level 20. Renxue looked at Yuntao. She didn't know what her soul power was, but what was certain was that the blue crystal ball responsible for testing was absorbing her own internal power. Does it mean that one's internal strength has become soul power in this world? Perhaps it was because Renxue's innate full soul power of level 20 had a significant impact on Yuntao, who tirelessly explained, "Our martial soul level is like this, with each level being a title. As long as the martial soul awakens, it can automatically be called a soul warrior. Of course, it is only a level 1 soul warrior. According to the strength of the martial soul power, the level is distinguished. The so-dot called innate full soul power is that after awakening, the soul power can reach the highest level of 10 innate. I have never heard of a person with innate full soul power of level 20, and when I awakened, it was not just a level 2 soul warrior." Renxue had already regained her senses and finally found a true soul master. She naturally wouldn't give up and quickly asked her own doubts, "Is the innate martial soul power only at level 20? It can't be any higher." Yuntao's whole body's blue light converged and he regained his martial soul possession. Now he cannot be certain. Previously, the highest level could reach level 10, and level 10 cannot be further improved unless you can find a soul ring. However, since Renxue has reached level 20 of innate full soul power, he feels that all the previous knowledge is deceiving him. Improving a soul master's strength is not easy. Every time you cross a title, not only do you need to reach the peak of your martial soul power from the previous title, but you also need to obtain a soul ring. Without a soul ring, even if you work hard to cultivate, you cannot enter the next title. Yuntao's voice changed and he said, "But for example, like you are now, because you have reached level 20 of innate full soul power, if you want to continue improving your soul power, it is no longer a dream. I guess you may not need a soul ring and can also practice the next title. However, you have been restless lately, so you should first obtain a soul ring, lay a solid foundation, and then continue to the next stage of cultivation." Yuntao said again, "For example, we must first obtain a soul ring and enter the next level before we can continue practicing. Renxue suddenly said, soul rings, are they the halo you just had on your body? You are at level 26, so you have 2 soul rings. Yuntao nodded and said, that's right. Your situation is very special. You have an innate full soul power of 20 levels, but you have never been a genius before. Unfortunately, it's really a pity. You are actually a useless martial soul. Even if your martial soul does not mutate, it is much stronger than the useless martial soul blue silver grass. In that case, I can. Yuntao didn't say any more. The mutated waste sickle probably couldn't even cut off the blue silver grass. Unfortunately, it's a pity. Renxue also vaguely understood his meaning, but at this moment, the veil that was covering his heart seemed to be lifted. Renxue has always been a person who is good at thinking, as she did in her previous life and still does in this life. According to Yuntao, if soul power is truly interconnected with one's own internal power. So, after arriving in this world, the internal power cultivated becomes soul power. And if you want to play steadily, you must obtain a soul ring, because of that called soul ring. What is a soul ring? When Renxue was about to continue asking, Yuntao had already picked up his package and walked outside. Old Jack. The door opened and old Jack nervously welcomed Yuntao. Master, how are you? Is it possible for the children in our village to become soul masters this year? Yuntao looked at him and sighed, saying, there is one, it's just a pity. Jack's eyes showed a look of suspicion and uncertainty, and he tentatively asked, Master, what exactly is that? Yuntao said, among these 8 children this year, only one has soul power, and she is still at level 20 of innate full soul power. Unfortunately, her martial soul is a sickle, and it mutates in a bad direction. Do you understand? A sickle that mutates in a bad direction. Innate soul power level 20. Oh my goodness. Old Jack's disappointed expression on his face was even more severe than Yuntao's. He has also been a village chief for so many years, naturally understanding what innate soul power represents. That child is still at level 20 of innate full soul power, but this level 20 of innate full soul power appears on a sickle martial soul that mutates in a bad direction, but it is really, Master, is it really impossible to cultivate a sickle that mutates in a bad direction? Jack frowned and asked. Yuntao could feel old Jack's feelings, but he wasn't as proud as he was at the beginning. He patted old Jack's shoulder and said, it's not that he can't cultivate at all. But, do you think a mutated useless martial soul will evolve into something with the improvement of its martial soul? The useless martial soul will eventually become a useless martial soul. Even if he becomes a soul master, he may still be a useless soul master, and his mutated bad sickle may not even be able to cut off the blue-silver grass. It's a pity that his innate soul power is at level 20. Alright, I'll leave first and go to the next village. After all, Yuntao didn't wait for Renxue to continue asking, so he left the village. Without Yuntao, Renxue could only run to old Jack and ask the most urgent question he wanted to know, Grandpa Jack, what is a soul ring? How can I obtain a soul ring? Old Jack seemed to be pondering Yuntao's words and instinctively replied, I don't know what a soul ring is. To obtain a soul ring, it seems like we need to hunt soul beasts. That's very dangerous, only soul masters will do it. Oh. Soul rings and soul beasts, these 2 brand new names are constantly echoing in Renxue's heart. At this moment, Jack had already regained his senses and looked down at Renxue in surprise, saying, Xiaoxue, you wouldn't be the innate soul power level 20 that the master said. The martial soul is a sickle, and it mutates in a bad direction, right? Renxue nodded and said, it's me. Old Jack crouched down and looked at Renxue face to face. Xiaoxue, I didn't expect your talent to be so outstanding. Unfortunately, you have such a father and don't have a good martial soul to pass on to you. Otherwise, maybe you can really become the second soul saint in our village. Tell Grandpa, would you be willing to go to a specialized school to learn the cultivation methods of soul masters? Only there can be the most accurate knowledge about martial souls. Qianren Snow shook her head and said, Grandpa Jack, I need to go home and ask my dad. Jack suddenly realized that, yes, no matter how sensible the child is, he will eventually be a child. Anyway, he needs to seek the opinion of Qianxun. I awakened a useless soul myself, and Grandpa Jack seemed to feel heartbroken. In order not to make Grandpa Jack so sad, Renxue whispered in front of Grandpa Jack, Grandpa Jack, in fact, I still have 2 martial souls. I didn't tell him, but I saw that they all awakened 1 martial soul, so I only showed 1 martial soul. Old Jack was shocked and quickly covered Renxue's mouth. He looked around at the villagers, but no one seemed to notice. In Renxue's ear, he whispered softly, Xiaoxue, don't say this to anyone else, except for your father. 3 martial souls, he has never heard of anyone awakening 3 martial souls, and their soul power is still innate full soul power level 20. For the safety of Xiaoxue, this matter must not be disclosed. Fortunately, Xiaoxue whispered to herself earlier, otherwise it would have been troublesome. There was a hint of firmness in old Jack's eyes. Although he really didn't want to see that messy ghost, he still had to remind Qianxun Ji for Xiaoxue's safety in the future. If Qianxun Ji's messy ghost talked everywhere and caused trouble for Xiaoxue, it wouldn't be good. Old Jack knows that geniuses like Xiaoxue have not yet grown up. If anyone from Haotian Sect finds out, it would be a devastating blow to Xiaoxue. Let's go, Xiaoxue. Grandpa will take you home. Old Jack first sneaked back to the other children, let their parents take them away, and then quickly brought Renxue back home. Chapter 8. 3 Life Martial Soul and Soul Power Fusion Cultivation Method, 1. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Not long after, old Jack led Renxue back home, and at the doorstep, Qianxun Ji had been waiting for a long time. Old Jack looked at Renxue and said, Xiaoxue, have you remembered everything Grandpa told you earlier? Renxue nodded and said, don't worry, Grandpa Jack. I won't tell anyone that I have 3 martial souls. Old Jack nodded in satisfaction and said to Renxue again, Xiaoxue, go play. I have something I want to tell your father. Renxue responded and ran towards the direction of the wooden stake, bouncing and jumping. Old Jack regained his senses and turned his gaze to Qianxun Ji again. He waved to Qianxun Ji and said, Xiaoji, come over here for a moment. Qianxun Ji's eyes narrowed slightly. Old Jack's expression was too serious. Is it something bad that happened to Xiaoxue? Thinking of this, he didn't care about what old Jack called him a minor illness. Taking 3 steps in 2, Qianxun Ji quickly approached old Jack and asked, Village Chief, has there been any problem with Xiaoxue's awakening of martial soul? Old Jack's expression also became serious. He glanced at Renxue, who was knocking on the wooden stake, and then looked at Qianxun Ji seriously, saying, Xiaoxue awakened her martial soul today and successfully awakened her soul power. Her soul power is innate full soul power level 20. Level 20. Qianxun Ji couldn't believe it, and an excited expression appeared in his eyes. This was his daughter, and Donger's daughter. Xiaoxue's talent should have been like this. Before Chihiro could recover from his excitement, old Jack released another bomb. Xiaoxue. Awakened 3 martial souls. Boom. A clear cry rang out in Qianxun Ji's mind, and the excitement in his heart was indescribable. 3 life martial souls, 3 life martial souls. Back then, Donger was just a twin martial soul, feared by those sects, and those sects even united to attack the martial soul hall. In order to protect the common people from the impact of war, Donger had to choose to sacrifice herself and end her supposed wonderful life. Now his daughter's talent is even greater than Donger's. He feels that he is worthy of Dong'er, but he quickly realized and asked, village chief, besides you, who else knows about this matter? Does the deacon of the Haotian branch hall know? Qianxun Ji's eyes flashed with a killing intent, unable to let Xueer's talent leak out, especially the people from Haotian branch hall. Old Jack waved his hand and said, you know, I know, Xueer knows. The people in the Haotian palace don't know. Xiaoxue is a smart person, and she hasn't shown her other two martial souls. The martial soul she showed is just a mutated and useless martial soul. So little illness. You must not talk nonsense about this matter, and you must also correct your drinking habits. If one day your drinking accidentally leaks out, it will be a devastating blow to Xiaoxue. You also know the actions of those people in the Haotian palace. As long as a genius refuses to belong to them, they will carry out a killing. Moreover, as a girl, if Xiaoxue is known by the people of the Haotian Sect, there is no need for me to tell you the consequences. Qianxun Ji nodded seriously, and now his attitude towards old Jack has improved. He bowed deeply to old Jack and said, thank you, village chief, for not revealing this matter. Upon hearing Qianxun's words, old Jack couldn't help but feel angry and said, what are you talking about? Xiaoxue, at least, was also someone I watched grow up with. I treated him like a granddaughter, how could I possibly reveal this matter? I came here to tell you that you can't promote this everywhere, and you have to keep it in your stomach. Do you understand? Qianxun's mouth twitched, how could he possibly harm his daughter? Nodding earnestly at old Jack. Upon seeing this, old Jack smiled contentedly and spoke again, Xiaoji, there is a quota for working-class students in the village. I plan to let Xiaoxue study at the Soul Master Academy. The Soul Master Academy in Notting City is independent and does not belong to any major sects or two empires. Moreover, the actual strength of the Soul Masters there is not very good. It should be difficult to see Xiaoxue's talent. Xiaoxue's choice of Notting City Soul Master Academy is undoubtedly the best choice. What do you think? Qianxun's illness was a bit unexpected. I didn't expect this usually simple-looking old village chief to have such deep thoughts. Where would even Xiaoxue go to practice and learn, and where would it be suitable? Everything has already been arranged. Old Jack is not at all wrong. Notting City Soul Master Academy is undoubtedly Xiaoxue's best choice, because he does not belong to any major sects or two empires, and is a private Soul Master Academy. Moreover, Notting City is relatively remote, and there are usually no powerful Soul Masters who come here. Thinking of this, Chihiro nodded and said, I agree. When will I go? Old Jack waved his hand and said, Notting City Soul Master Academy will only start recruiting students in 3 months. You should also change your lazy personality in these 3 months. Studying at Soul Master Academy requires money, and you need to think about earning more gold soul coins in these 3 months so that Xiaoxue can study well at Soul Master Academy. I will. When old Jack said he was lazy, Chihiro couldn't deny it. He has indeed been a bit lazy over the years, but now it's different. Now he has to think for Xueer and can't ruin his image in Xueer's heart, so he needs to change himself. Old Jack nodded and spoke again, you know what? You just need to focus on making money. I will take Xiaoxue to the Soul Master Academy in Notting City to report. This martial soul certificate opened by the Haotian branch is with me. Old Jack's gaze at Qianxun Ji was clearly indicating that if you had lost such an important thing, it wouldn't have been good. Village chief, just look at the arrangements. For old Jack, Qianxun Ji still trusts him quite a bit. In this village, besides himself, who else likes Xiaoxue the most? That's only the old Jack in front of me. Old Jack spoke again, all right, I've said everything that needs to be said. I'm leaving now, and I need to earn some more soul coins for Xiaoxue. I'll come pick her up in 3 months. Remember what I'm telling you, you can't say anything about Xiaoxue having 3 martial souls. Before leaving, old Jack specifically reminded Qianxun of his illness, fearing that the drunkard would speak recklessly. Watching old Jack leave, Chihiro felt for the first time that old Jack was a good person. Turning his gaze from old Jack to Renxue, who was driving wooden stakes on the side, Qianxun Ji called out softly, "Xueer, come into the house. I have something to tell you." Upon hearing this, Renxue quickly stopped beating the wooden stake and followed Qianxun Ji into the room with a bouncing motion. Entering the room, Qianxun Ji looked at Renxue and said, "The village chief just said you have 3 martial souls, isn't that true?" Renxue nodded and said, "Dad, I have 3 martial souls, and they only have 1. It seems like I'm different from theirs. What's going on in this situation?" Upon hearing Renxue personally speak up to confirm, Qianxun Ji's excited expression in his eyes once again revealed. "It's okay, having 3 martial souls is a good thing. Now you release those 3 martial souls for me to see. Don't you save it after seeing this." Seeking recommended tickets, seeking follow-up reading. Chapter 9. 3 Life Martial Soul and Soul Power Fusion Cultivation Method, 2. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Renxue gently lifted her left and right hands, emitting bursts of black light. A rusty sickle and a black spider appeared in each of her hands. The sickle slowly spun in Renxue's hand, then became faster and faster, and finally turned into a huge and silent black sickle. The black sickle emitted bursts of black light, and a cold and deadly aura ravaged the room. At this moment, the room seemed to darken. Qianxun Ji was stunned. Is this the second mutation of the martial soul? It's not surprising that Qianxun Ji thinks so, because this sickle is really too big. The length of the handle alone exceeds 1 zhang, and the length of the 1-foot-wide blade also exceeds 2 meters. On the blade, the black crystal emitted a soft halo like ripples of water, with black rays swallowing in sharpness, causing a large amount of black gusts to appear around it. It can be imagined that if such a weapon were to make a simple sweep on the battlefield, it would create such a terrifying and bloody scene. Renxue didn't expect her martial soul to disobey. She made a rusty sickle in front of her, causing her to be despised by Master Su Yuntao. Now that you have changed, isn't this playing with her? The spider martial soul that appeared in her hand emitted bursts of black light, with a dark body and a spherical shape. Its eyes are round and very like black pearls. Sharp claws grow on the edge of the mouth. There are 8 legs, some are brown and black, and some are gray and black. It looks very beautiful. Renxue's eyebrows furrowed as well. Do you think? I want to become a spider. A spider spirit in the future. Do you think of the future where you will become a martial soul possessed like a cloud and become a spider spirit, wielding a sickle to fight with others? Renxue rolled her eyes. Hehe, really, the thought of that scene made her feel uncomfortable. At the moment when Qianxun Ji saw the spider martial soul, a hint of sadness flashed in his eyes, and the uniqueness of the sickle in Renxue's hand was clearly forgotten by him. It's a spider, just like Dongers. Qianxun Ji said to himself in a small voice. His eyes also showed a hint of mist, and he thought of his daughter having a 3rd martial soul. He spoke again, and where is your 3rd martial soul? Renxue withdrew her martial soul from her hands, and the room gradually lit up. Then, with a clap of her hands, a burst of light emanated from behind her. However, unlike the front, the light behind her was no longer black, but instead platinum. As the light slowly condensed, a figure appeared behind her, with 6 wings on its back and long golden hair, equally beautiful and beautiful. The hands of this figure hugged, as if wanting to embrace Renxue. It was so gentle and kind. It is so sacred and noble that one cannot help but feel the emotion of bowing with a bow. With the appearance of the martial soul, waves of light emanated from the room, and the whole room became bright. Compared with the reaction of the martial soul in front, it was completely different. One belonged to darkness and the other belonged to light. Angel martial soul. Qianxun Ji murmured to himself, yes, this is angel martial soul. Angel martial soul, Dad, what is angel martial soul? Renxue was curious, obviously Dad knew about his martial soul. Qianxun Ji didn't say much to Renxue, but instead said very seriously, Xueer, in the future, neither your spider martial soul nor this angel martial soul can be revealed. Unless absolutely necessary, you cannot use it, and you must protect your spider martial soul with the knife in your hand and the angel martial soul behind you. Also, you can use your sickle in the future. Your other two martial souls cannot add soul rings unless one day you can reach the level of being titled Douluo. Only then can you add soul rings to your other two martial souls. Qianxun Ji seemed to have thought of something again and spoke up again, and in the future, you can't infuse soul bones into your body. Although Renxue didn't know what soul bones were, she obediently nodded. Dad, do you know what those two martial souls of mine are called? Renxue asked eagerly. Qianxun Ji shook his head and said, why don't Xueer give your martial soul two names herself? Renxue thought for a moment and said, my black sickle is called the Death God sickle, and we call the spider martial soul the Black Spider Emperor. Qianxun nodded and then said, all right, you go out and play. In a few days, Dad will take you to obtain the soul ring. Qianxun Ji has decided not to hide himself anymore, and there are some things he needs to face in advance. He plans to wait for Xueer to enter the Nodding City Soul Master Academy, and then he will go back to the Martial Soul Hall. After enduring this for so many years, it is time to go back and take a look. And the inheritance of their angel clan should lie with Xueer, and they also need to tell their father this news. Renxue nodded obediently, then bounced out. However, when she arrived outside, Renxue was not in a hurry for today's cultivation. Master Su Yuntao was right. The cultivation journey must be steady, and one should not be too impatient. Now she is even more curious about what happened to her sickle. With the release of soul power in Renxue's hand, a small sickle appeared. As Renxue's soul power continued to increase, the sickle also grew larger and larger. Then she slowly withdrew her soul power, and the sickle became smaller and smaller. Renxue thought it was fun and released her soul power, but the soul power that was originally black light now turned crimson. The crimson soul power was filled with coldness, blood, slaughter, and evil. This soul power suddenly rushed out of Renxue's hand and directly infiltrated her mind. Renxue only felt a headache and then fainted. Dida in the dim underground passage, it appears exceptionally quiet, even the sound of water droplets falling can be clearly heard. Renxue didn't know where this was, but she was a bit scared because the underground passage was too dark. Now she just wants to escape from here, from this unfamiliar place. Just like this, Renxue kept running in the underground passage, hoping to find the exit. In the entire underground passage, apart from the sound of water droplets, there was only the sound of Renxue's footsteps running, her breathing, and her heartbeat beating. He kept running in the underground passage like this, 5 minutes later, 10 minutes later, an hour later, and she never stopped. After running for 2 hours, she saw a glimmer of light. Renxue accelerated her speed again and ran towards the bright spot. Finally, the emperor lived up to her intentions and she ran to the bright spot. This time it was no longer a dimly lit passage, but a dimly lit square, but Renxue was even more afraid. Her eyes were trembling, and following her gaze, there was a huge cage in front of the square. At the crack of the cage's door, there was a seal attached, and inside the cage, there was a huge fox transformed from crimson soul power. The body of this huge fox seemed to be like a mountain range, her body was all crimson, and behind the fox, 9 huge tails were waving in the air. And the fox's eyes, full of coldness, blood, and slaughter, stared fixedly at Renxue. Renxue was frightened and trembled all over, but before she could make any movement, the fox opened its huge mouth and roared at her. With the roar of the fox, a fierce wind swept through the square, carrying blood and slaughter, all rushing towards Qianren Snow. Qianren Snow gradually dissipated in this fierce wind. Chapter 10. 3 Lives Martial Soul and Soul Power Fusion Method, 3. You are listening at novelfull.audio. In the early morning, the first ray of sunlight shone on the earth, revealing the face of Douluo continent. In Xinghun village, a small dilapidated house, the sunlight shone through the window into this small house, and also onto Renxue who was still sleeping. At this moment, Renxue is sweating profusely. A gust of fresh wind rushed into the room, blowing on Renxue's sweaty face. Renxue suddenly woke up and sat up from the bed, panting heavily, her body still trembling. A feeling of fear also appeared on her face. She doesn't understand what's going on. She seems to have had a very scary dream. Looking at his own room, Renxue was still in fear. The door was gently pushed open, and Qianxun Ji walked in from outside. He looked at his daughter and frowned, but fortunately, Renxue was fine. Qianxun hurriedly squatted down by Renxue's bed, picked her up from the bed, and looked at her daughter still in fear. Qianxun Ji comforted, "Xueer, don't be afraid. It's okay, you just overused your soul power and fainted. Now it's okay. In the future, when using your soul power, you need to master your soul power well. You can't control your soul power well yet, so you don't even know that your soul power has been used up." Renxue nodded in a wooden tone, tightly hugging her father. Perhaps only by Qianxun Ji's side could he feel safe, because that dream was too real. Even if she became a person in 2 worlds, he couldn't help but feel scared. And there was that kind of soul power that appeared yesterday. Although Renxue doesn't understand the difference in soul power in this world. But she could feel that soul power was filled with bloodshed and resentment, yes, resentment. When such a situation occurred, Renxue didn't think it was normal. On the contrary, she was a bit worried, but Renxue didn't tell Qianxun Ji. Qianxun Ji walked out of the room holding Renxue, and the sunlight shone on her small face. She couldn't help but close her eyes and press her face tightly against Qianxun Ji's chest. Qianxun hurriedly walked to the door and put Renxue down. "Xueer, go wash up and have dinner right away." Renxue nodded and then walked to the side of the water tank, using a ladle to pour some water and gently wiping her sweaty face. Brushing her teeth and washing her hair was done in one go. At the age of only 6, Renxue's hair was lush, but at a young age, her hair was not long, so it didn't take much time to tidy it up. Recovering her emotions, Renxue once again regained her innocent and lovely appearance. Jumping into the room and watching Qianxun Ji sit in front of the table, Renxue walked over and said, "Wow, Dad, why are there so many delicious foods today?" Qianxun Ji looked at his precious daughter and then smiled, saying, "Xiaoxue is growing her body now. She needs to eat more delicious food, and Xueer is now an adult and can become a soul master. Practicing is a physically demanding job, so she needs to eat more." Renxue smiled happily. This was the first time he felt fatherly love in this world. She was very happy and had a bright smile. It didn't take long for the 2 of them to finish their meal. After finishing, Qianxun Ji tidied up the dishes and walked with Renxue to the ancient tree outside the door. The 2 sat next to a stone stool, and Qianxun Ji was teaching Renxue how to control her soul power. The so-called soul power control is actually the fusion of soul power and spiritual power, and then using spiritual power to drive soul power to achieve the desired effect. Qianxun Ji also demonstrated to Renxue, "Xueer, believe it or not, I can pick up the teacup on this stone table out of thin air without letting it spill a little." Renxue's head shook like a tambourine, with an expression of disbelief on her face. "Dad, how could you pick it up out of thin air? You're not Superman." "Superman. Although Qianxun Ji doesn't know what the Superman in Qianren Snow means. But sometimes this daughter always says strange things or does strange things, and he has become accustomed to it. Qianxun Ji gently lifted his right hand, and as he lifted it, a soul power slowly overflowed from his hand. This soul power seemed to be substantial, gradually moving towards the teacup. Qianxun Ji slowly controlled his soul power to wrap the teacup around it. Then, under Qianxun Ji's control, the teacup actually slowly rose, and its height was about 1 meter away. Moreover, the tea inside the teacup did not spill at all. Upon seeing this scene, Renxue couldn't help but enlarge her eyes. Her eyes were full of small stars, and she looked at Qianxun Ji with a look of admiration. Dad is really amazing. Looking at the admiring gaze in his daughter's eyes, Qianxun Ji smiled awkwardly and said, "Do you want to learn?" Renxue nodded like a pecking rice, looking at his father with a hopeful expression in his eyes. Looking at his daughter's appearance, Qianxun Ji didn't show any concern and explained, "Actually, when releasing soul power in your hands, it's definitely difficult to control it with your mind or spiritual power at the beginning. You should follow the steps I said first and set a small goal. As long as you can touch the soul power in your hand to this teacup without letting it break, then proceed to the second step." Renxue couldn't wait and wanted to give it a try. She saw him gently lift his right hand and release a touch of soul power from his hand. As she slowly controlled her soul power, it actually went towards the direction of the teacup. But during the process of releasing soul power midway, those soul powers dissipated. Renxue was not discouraged and released her soul power again, but it remained the same. Renxue is very dissatisfied. Why can Dad control his soul power well, but not himself? She was dissatisfied and once again controlled her soul power, time and time again, so repeatedly. Until her soul power was exhausted, she reluctantly touched the teacup, but the teacup shattered instantly. Renxue knew it was her own problem. There was a powerful energy in her soul power, and if one couldn't control it well, she would shatter the teacup. In the following days, Renxue would repeat this cycle, but fortunately, the emperor did not disappoint those who had intentions. Finally, when he touched the teacup for the first time, it did not break. Renxue's face also showed a satisfied expression, which was joy, the joy of success. Next, she went on to the second step of training, wrapping her soul power around the teacup, but when she was doing this stage, the teacup surprisingly broke again. Although the teacup broke, Renxue was not discouraged. She changed it again and the cup broke again. In the past few days, Renxue didn't know how many teacups she had harmed. How much would it cost? For her, who used to be a hard-working mistress of a Chinese state-owned enterprise in her past life, money is like a little star. She was also a little worried about the money, but in order to control her soul, she had to break the cup again. After a few more days, she was finally able to gently lift the teacup with her soul power. Although the water in the teacup still spills out, it has been done very well and her efforts have been recognized by her father. At this moment, Renxue realized that her father was also a soul master. Dad turned out to be a soul master, but he hasn't done anything in recent years. He still wants to make money to support his family. Thinking of this, Renxue walked angrily to Qianxun Ji's side. "Dad, are you a soul master?" Renxue didn't mean to ask, but confirmed directly. Qianxun Ji looked at his daughter in front of him with a hint of complexity in his eyes. Then he sighed and said, "Xueer, it's time for you to know something. Although you may feel a lot of pressure after knowing it, since you asked this question, I'll tell you. Come with me." After finishing speaking, Qianxun Ji walked back to his room, followed by Renxue. When he arrived at Qianxun Ji's room, he saw Qianxun Ji groping on the wall for a while, then lightly pressing a stone. At the moment when the stone sank, an underground passage appeared on the ground in Qianxun Ji's room. Following Qianxun Ji into the basement, Renxue finally saw clearly that this was actually a secret room. Unexpectedly, Dad still had a secret. On the wall of the secret room, there hangs a portrait of a woman, whose figure is not particularly tall. She is dressed in a golden long dress, which fits perfectly from head to toe. The dazzling dress sparkles with over 100 red, blue, and gold gemstones on top. The 9 curved purple gold crown on top of the head is even more dazzling, holding a scepter about 2 meters long, inlaid with countless gemstones. Her fair skin and almost perfect appearance make her look so unique. Especially the intangible nobility and sacredness revealed on one's body can't help but evoke a feeling of bowing and bowing. A woman is so stunning in beauty, noble, elegant, and tranquil, and all kinds of beautiful words seem to be applicable to her. Below the portrait of the woman, there is a spiritual tablet with 8 large characters engraved on it. The spiritual tablet of the beloved wife Bibidong. Persisting in writing is not enough for capital. I need the power of capital to invest. It's about 30,000 words. If you want to invest, hurry up. If you don't come and stand short, I will write 50,000 yuan to apply for a contract. If you succeed, you will get rich. If you don't succeed, everyone can finish it together. It's also good to have a companion on the road to failure.